Welcome everybody, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program Interstellar Quest, episode number 18. An episode in which we will gather more science to pave the way toward our interstellar journey. And we are in phase 1 of our roadmap, which means Kerbin, Sphere of Influence, a little bit beyond, but basically mastering local space, and that includes the Mun and Minmus. And so you are looking at the Seagan F10. The Seagan has become our reliable crew capsule for lunar missions. Maybe we'll do something different in the near future, but we'll keep that as a small surprise. For now, this has become our most reliant spacecraft, and it's more than capable of getting to the Mun and to Minmus, carrying 4 Kerbinauts and safely returning them home. And today you are looking at Jebediah Kerbin, Bob Kerbin, Katfried Kerbin and Brooke Kerbin. Most of them are veterans. Most of them, I think all of them are veterans. Not quite sure about Katfried, but at least Brooke has been to the Mun. Yes, Katfried has been there as well. So they've all been to the Mun before, and they've been selected with that particular skill set in mind. Here we go. And you may wonder, why did he put Jebediah on there? Because Jebediah is typically reserved for the high-stakes missions, testing new spacecraft, going on dangerous missions, and the same is similar for Bob, who is our most senior scientist. And that is because we're not going to the Mun. We are actually here to make a not so complicated rendezvous, but well, it will turn out to be complicated nevertheless, because Jebediah forgot that turning a spacecraft with maybe a 5-ton intercept stage is quite the challenge. And the problem with rendezvous is that if you want to get close to a craft, you typically point towards it and speed up. But as you do that, you gain orbital velocity, which means your orbit gets raised, which is kind of confusing in the beginning. So sometimes you have to slow down in order to get closer, while for example, right now we're slowing down and we're dropping in orbit, getting closer. But Jebediah has mastered the craft, and he's now pointing his trusted Seagan spacecraft towards the Mun hopper, which we featured in a previous episode, I think somewhere around episode 12, which was used to gather a lot of science from the Mun. And there's another moon in orbit of Kerbin, which is Minmus, and why not try to capture that science as well? You can see we've lit up the docking port for I don't know what reason, and I'm not sure why it's red, but at least it helps us to figure out the alignment. Well, it could have helped us with figuring out the alignments, because as we get very close, I realize that they are the wrong side around, so I have to rotate the spacecraft. And here we go. That's the sound of the magnetic locks engaging. The Mun hopper is more than capable of getting into orbit of the Moon. It won't be able to land from lunar orbit. It will be able to land from Minmus orbit, because Minmus has only a fraction of the gravity that Mun has. And so we're picking up this spacecraft rather reverse Apollo style, bringing a spacecraft from the Mun to a different moon. Yes, that's Minmus in the distance. This mint bowl of... could it be ice? It looks like ice cream. At least that's what the developers originally thought, and that's what the description in the game files actually reads. Anyway, we're swinging around the moon to capture in a low orbit, and Katfried and Brooke are going to stay on board the craft, doing their local science, maybe doing some observations and staying in close contact with Bob and Jeb, who have maneuvered themselves into the lander and are on their way down. Now, the Seagan craft would have been able to push the lander here as well, but since we had all the fuel in the transfer stage, I thought, well, why not just use that? And yeah, Jeb and Bob, they have some planning to do. Fortunately, the ScanSat missions that went before you, the scouting missions, have captured a ton of data, including very high resolution maps. You can see me grab science as we descend, because we got a couple interesting instruments on there, and some data we did not have the ability to capture before, mainly because it's well, difficult to reset the data. For example, you have material science and you have the goo canister. And if you capture that data, it locks the canister, unless you bring a scientist like Bob. And because he can reset the experiments. And you also need a pilot like Jeb who can do all these magnificent suicide burns and put the spacecraft down on the surface. Yeah, we also added Kerbal effects, which is a cool mod which gives us some nice effects once we land. Jebediah is not completely happy with the site that Brooke and Katfried selected, so he's gonna punch in again and manually pick a different site by swinging the spacecraft and using MacJeb's magnificent landing prediction guiding thingy, which will give you a nice blue indicator on the surface where you're gonna land. It doesn't exactly tell you what steep the angle is, but, well, it's good enough for now. And yeah, we can deploy all the instruments, put the drills in the floor, start gathering and refilling all the tanks. The solar panels have been specifically modified to be able to retract them again. And I forgot, of course, I need to do a surface report before I can actually start harvesting. But here we go. We are capturing ore and the converters are running, creating liquid fuel and oxidizer. I think propellant would be a better name than liquid fuel. Well, anyway. Yeah, so Bob starts with his part of the mission, meaning that you have to reset experiments and gather samples and EVA reports and maybe some rocks that will work well in the geology collection of Kerbin. Now, Minmus is an interesting place. I generally dislike building bases there because of the low gravity. In the one part, it's easy to get there and get all this material or spacecraft to land very easily. It's easier to land on Minmus than it is to land on the Mun. But it also means walking is very wobbly. You can't really use rovers to maneuver around. But the science is still good. And here you can see the ScanSat maps and the science indicators on the right, which I'm using to figure out did I get all the science. And here we go. Finished in the first biome. Yeah, so only 8 more to go. And there are 9 biomes on the Minmus. I'm not going to show you each and every one of them, but I'm going to show you basically how we did it. We figure out the next location to go to. Burn. This time we're going to the pole. And then try not to hit any mountains as you fly over there. And Jebediah, being the experienced pilot that he is of course more than capable of putting the craft down 9 times. In fact, we could make multiple jumps without refueling on this craft. I was a little bit cautious because on one of the missions I did run almost out of fuel and had to make an emergency landing just to refuel. But it's not as bad as it is on the Mun, where we had to make several hops in order to get to a new biome. Yeah, having low gravity has its advantages. And you can see me capture the sides. There's a little of data in the upper left corner telling me what I'm doing, but you don't need to see all that. You're not interested in that part. Bob can of course also fly around in his jetpack as he takes the data from the different instruments and puts it in the special science container. Yeah, and then flies around to the experiments. Here he's resetting the material experiments. The goo experiment apparently can only be reset so many times because, yeah, it ran out of actions. Well, probably should have thought of that before sending a crew down to Minmus. So we're not going to plunder Minmus of all its science. It's gonna have some secrets. It's gonna keep some secrets from us, but I think that's okay. We are burning to one of the flat areas. The flat areas like frozen lake areas. Ooh, that's pretty high. Yeah, so they're frozen lake areas, very flat, nice to build a base on because it's very stable. Easy to navigate towards as well because you can see them quite obviously from the sky. Landing is also not that hard. Here we go. Now the reason why we're doing is that because we are going to need the science to unlock a couple of crucial elements in our text tree, and most notably stuff that has everything to do with around better ISRU, so in situ resource utilization. So we're expanding our Moonbase Alpha into a significant outpost, meaning it has fuel production capacity and the ability to service a spacecraft in low orbit of the Moon, and also do some collection. This is also a nice maneuver. If you watch your vertical velocity, and you can see that drop, you can actually use just small puffs to go upwards and sort of hover over the surface. And if you've seen For All Mankind, where Tracy rides around the Marines on the LSAM, that's exactly the kind of maneuver that you're doing. But obviously, the effects that For All Mankind can use in their production is a little bit more advanced than what I can do, but well, you get the point. Vertical velocity versus horizontal velocity. Super helpful indicator to put in the top right of your screen. Anyway, we made it to another biome and are deploying all our equipment to start drilling for more fuel. And this time it's Jebediah leaving. Why is Jebediah leaving the spacecraft? Well, he's leaving because he spotted something on the sensor, something that was sort of on the way heading towards the new biome. And he just had to go and check it out, because in the distance you can see Wayfinder AA1, and I think we deployed this in something like episode 4. This is the cute little rover that traversed so much of the Minmus surface, despite being very unstable, and the reaction control wheels actually saving it most of the time. So we'll roleplay that Jebediah fixed the rover's battery system, and it's autonomously now driving towards the nearest, most interesting artifact, which is of course our spacecraft, bringing along with it a fresh goo container with science that may have been transmitted to Kerbin, but for sure has not been brought back to Kerbin. So this little rover lives to serve another day and give us something more in the terms of research. And so Bob has also descending from the spacecraft, grabbing the science that has been sitting here for almost a year and a half now. You also find some interesting green stones on the Moon, which you can bring with you. Yes, there are a couple of stones you can bring with you, and they're not easy to find. Well, there's cheats for you to find them, but if you don't know what you're looking for, it's quite difficult to pick them out along the surface. But if you do, it's super helpful, and I'm sure it's going to bring us lots of interesting insights about what Minmus is made of. But we're going to leave a little rover behind and fly on. And we didn't do a couple of more biomes, but I'll spare you all those because they're basically all the same. We are burning to a direct intercept of the Seagan spacecraft. Yeah, that was also something I've not done in a long time. A direct intercept is where you meet up with the spacecraft in orbit. It's a lot of tweaking of the orbit. But it's not impossible to do. Some people are very skilled in it. I'm maybe just not that good of a pilot. But I'm always proud if I can make it towards my spacecraft without any additional, like first going into orbit and then do a Hohmann transfer. Here we go. And it's also proof that I don't use MacNap for everything. I kind of use it for the boring tasks that I know how to do. But there's also stuff that MacJab just can't do, which is, for example, these kind of intercept rendezvous burns. Or ascending from moons in general, it's not very good at that. At least I've not been able to figure that out. Here we go, again, fiddling out with the docking ports, how to align, but it is done. We are back. And Bob is taking one last EVA to fly over to the science container that's mounted to the sides, bringing all the experiments. I'm sure you saw on the screen how many there were, like a lot of experiments. And then mounting and boarding the main capsule, which will automatically transfer all the experiments to the Seagan capsule. And here we are, the crew is catching up, checking out the last views of Minmus, separating the Munnerhopper. It was done its job, and we're going to leave it here in Minmus orbit. Maybe it will be visited in some future space archaeologist. For now, I think it's served its purpose. And we are going back to Kerbin. And again, that's not a big burn going from Minmus. And the Seagan is, of course, designed to be able to land on the Mun and go back up. So it has more than enough Delta V to safely get back. And you may think that brings us close to the end of the episode, but we've got one more additional mission that I want to show you. Yeah, here we go. And we're touching the atmosphere. What I do like about the shuttle returns is that we pick our landing sites very deliberately, whereas with capsules, I don't care. I just throw them in the atmosphere and I'm sure they're going to land somewhere, which is not really that realistic. And when I was playing Real Solar System, I was trying to get precision landings, even with capsules, but that turns out to be complicated tasks. Regardless, we are coming back right in top of a city, if I'm to trust the parallax, but yeah, probably not. Here we go. Going down, and we are going to land somewhere in the woods, and I hope the rescue crafts will find us before the wolves do. Which was actually a thing on Soviet spacecraft, which is why they bring a gun. I'm not sure if the Americans bring a gun, maybe for sharks. Or I could joke that maybe because they're Americans. Anyway, you're looking at the launch of the Steward mission. And a Steward is an acronym. Steward stands for Sample Transport Extraction Wayfinder-Automated Retrieval from Dres. Yeah, that's quite a mouthful. You know, you can tell I spent some time trying to come up with that. But what we're trying to do is go over to Dres, because we have this rover on Dres, and we struggled a bit with getting the science back. So we are going to do a Perseverance kind of mission in which we send a second spacecraft to the surface of Dres, which will connect to the first, grab the science, and then go back. And we can launch it on a 4 missile. It's something like 15 tons. And that's mainly because of the large transfer and return stage, which is considerable. And I'm not exactly sure how much Delta V I need to get over there, capture, and get into the exact orbit that I need to be in to make this happen. But I trust we are all right. On top you can see the lander spacecraft, and then we have the orbiter that's connected with it. And we have to wait a bit for the perfect time to pick up our transfer window and then head over. As with many of the missions, we have quite a bit of fuel left in the transfer stage, so we're going to use that to get there. I'm super excited about this mission, as I was for Perseverance, and maybe you can let me know in the comments what you think. Is there ever going to be a sample return mission from Mars? Because I think the Rosalind Franklin rover is going over there from ESA. We have Perseverance there capturing all those samples. It would be a real shame if we would not get those samples back. But here we go. Steward is on a mission. Great insertion burn to Dres. And we got plenty of fuel left, so I hope we are good. But we'll have to wait until a later episode for you to find that out. Until then,